no internet, didn't cater for not everyone having laptops and that type of thing, didn't cater for the price point that South African and African universities could afford. And that's when we went full on and decided, no, we're going to build this app, we're going to build this company. I resigned from the bank, and then from then on I've been focusing flat out on growing the Invigilator. I'm Nick Riemer. I'm a chartered accountant from Johannesburg, South Africa, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a business called The Invigilator. I think growing up in South Africa, sport was sort of always a big part of my life. Played a lot of cricket growing up, a lot of golf growing up, and I think that definitely sort of primary school, so maybe even early high school, doing something in sport, playing professional sport was obviously, a dream of most South Africans playing sport at the time. So I think that was obviously, something there. I think as I grew up and got a bit older, so my passion for business, for finance started to develop. And I think that, trying to make it in sport for me was obviously, I wasn't good enough, and I was able to determine that, quite early on. But I think that, through business, through finance, I've been very fortunate to be involved with a number of different sort of sporting activities, events, sponsoring one or two players back in South Africa. And that for me has obviously been, an unbelievable thing to do. So school, like I said, I think sport was obviously my first priority, definitely, sort of leading into high school. I think that I always had a really good sort of study ethic. I placed big importance on sort of studying and working hard, but at the same time definitely had the balance of playing a lot of sport. Even going into my sort of first degree, I actually never studied the chartered accountancy straight out of my studies. I actually went to the University of Stellenbosch first to play cricket and studied sort of a finance degree. Really interested in finance, but I think that studying the chartered accountancy while playing sort of full-time sport for the university was going to be a little bit much. So that kind of convinced me to rather focus on finance and then do the sport. And I think that was a really good decision, because I think it would have been very difficult to try and balance all of that, I think I did nicely in terms of university in my first degree, and then obviously made the decision to go back and do my chartered accountancy, then back in Johannesburg at the University of Johannesburg. So I, once qualifying in my finance degree, first joined the mergers and acquisitions team, and quickly realized that I was working with a lot of chartered accountants. My father's a chartered accountant, so we've obviously been exposed to it from a very young age. And I think that I was very interested in either running a team like the M&A team, or being involved in the businesses that we were investing in at the time. And for me, that was sort of the chartered accountancy degree qualification sort of gave me the best foundation, I suppose, to go and compete with big businesses, and to go and sort of take a seat at the table in potentially going and running one of those divisions. And I think that was sort of the emphasis. And when I made that decision to go and study the chartered accountancy, it became my whole world. I focused on I did a conversion year while working, so you sort of catch up the BAC, or the Bachelor of Accounting qualification, over 3 years in 1 year. So I did that while working, and then when I did my honours year, we call it the Certificate in the Theory of Accountancy, so CTA in South Africa. I did that full time and really made that my full priority when studying, and did absolutely everything in achieving the best marks that I possibly could. Obviously once making that decision. Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to do academic articles at the University of Johannesburg once I'd done my honours here. Like I said, I worked extremely hard in my studies, so I think I got a fortunate position to go back to the university for sort of one of the years of my apprenticeship or articles. And that's where I got exposed to lecturing, setting papers, engaging with students, and it was something that just sort of resonated with me. It was something where sort of a passion started to grow, especially for finance. I lectured finance at the time. Once finishing that year, I moved into the investment bank to complete the rest of my training contract. So I moved to a bank called First Rand and rotated through FNB, Rand Merchant Bank, in seeing the different aspects, I suppose, of all of the finance divisions. Still stayed involved with academia though. Guest lectured when I could, set papers when I could, and once qualifying as a CA, headed up one of the investment teams at the F&B Wealth and Investment teams, and wrote a lot of the investment education content on behalf of the bank, did a lot of interviews on behalf of the bank on financial literacy, on talking about complex sort of financial instruments, financial strategies. So that was obviously something that sort of clicked and linked in back with my passion for lecturing at the time, but in a slightly different way. And then at the beginning of 2020, when we had the idea to create the Invigilator application, it was an application that was very much needed in South Africa and Africa at the time, because all of the international technology didn't necessarily cater for, no internet, didn't cater for not everyone having laptops and that type of thing, didn't cater for the price point that South African and African universities could afford. And that's when we went full on and decided, no, we're going to build this app, we're going to build this company. And that's what I did. So I resigned from the bank, and then from then on I've been focusing flat out on growing the Invigilator. So when you write an exam away from the venue, which is obviously what everyone had to experience as a result of COVID, a lot of the technologies monitor students continuously through constant video streaming. Now, if you put that in a sort of an emerging market, very difficult for students, number one, to have constant internet connection and then have enough data to be able to, to do that anyway. Laptops, price point, it just wasn't going to work. So what you ended up having is that lots of universities had absolutely no technology that they could do it. So it was almost like an honesty system where there was no tech that could be used. So everyone wrote from home, and then obviously the academic integrity of all of those assessments then came into question during 2020. So we decided to create a mobile-based application. So any entry-level mobile phone can run our technology. And what it does is it makes sure that the correct student is writing that paper through a facial recognition algorithm. It makes sure students are not talking while they're writing through a speech detection algorithm. It makes sure no one's sitting next to one another with GPS detection. It allows the students to upload all of their work, upload their scripts after the assessment straight into the app to submit it onto the lecturer's dashboard for marking. And then we run a comparison across the university and publish works to make sure that no answers have been shared or copied out of textbooks, that type of thing. So really what it does, it all runs in a way that it runs in app without the student needing to be connected to the internet the whole time. So what it has allowed South Africa and Africa to do is really open up the borders in terms of study. You no longer need to move to a university or get a residence to go and actually study at a university. You can be based wherever suitable for you, attend your online lectures on the devices that you have, and then write all of your assessment and tests then on your entry-level mobile device to make sure that you're doing everything under the correct exam conditions. It maintains your exam integrity. And then the best part is obviously for the universities, it's reducing all the fixed costs. They no longer have to limit the acceptance of students based on the venues that they've got available. They can start accepting more and more students, which is making education more accessible and then, more importantly, more affordable in our country. So I got the finance brain in the family. Luckily, my brother got the sort of very gifted software engineer brain. So I think when we started, there four of us that founded the application. So two senior lecturers from the University of Johannesburg, myself, and then my brother, obviously handling the tech side. And I think for us, what we were able to do, and I suppose this is why we were able to sort of penetrate the market so quickly. Up to now, we've got about 25 universities making use of the app. One of our biggest universities has about 360,000 students alone making use of the technology. So we've got a lot of students making use of the solution. But I think that all of the existing technology that was typically developed in the first world didn't necessarily take a step back and think, what do the academics need? What do the students need? And because we had that sort of first-hand experience of academia ourselves, combining it with the right tech and building it ourselves to suit specific needs of students and lecturers in emerging markets was the reason that we were able to create, I suppose, a popular product, a product that was able to scale so quickly and ultimately be used across sort of the majority of institutions now where I'm from. So I think I always had, when I went to go and talk to my dad and say, I'm now going to leave sort of M&A to go and study my CA, he was like, well, it's a big decision. You're already in a front office role. Why on earth would you do that? And it was just something that I needed to do. It was like a deep burning. I always said to him, it was just something I had to do. I really wanted to progress in my career. I really wanted to put myself as a business owner one day. And if I look back on it now, if I never made that decision, if I never went and studied my CA, I wouldn't have done academic articles at the University of Johannesburg. I wouldn't have met my business partners now who were instrumental in obviously helping, drive the solution forward and making it sort of as successful as it is today. It wouldn't have given me the context of what students and lecturers would have needed. And it wouldn't have given me the financial foundation to, I suppose, create the company from the first place. I mean, we did a big sort of private equity deal, a year into launching the solution where, we had different offers coming in. And I mean, if you didn't have, the good sort of financial foundation that the CA degree gives you, you might have been, or we might have been a little bit out of our depth. But I suppose with the background that we've all got, we were able to sort of lead the transaction from start to execution, bring on big capital funders, allow us now to drive the product, not just in South Africa and Africa, but globally as well. So really the CA qualification has given me everything. Yeah, so I think, there's been the stereotype that if you're a chartered accountant, you're either going to be an auditor or you're going to work in banking, and that's not necessarily the case. I think that, the CA qualification puts you in this absolutely fortunate position where, you are probably, one of the, the fortunate few in the world that, understand financial literacy from top to bottom. So look for opportunities. There's so many problems in the world, and problems are not something to moan about. Problems mean that you can actually put your mind to solving a solution or a potential solution for it. I mean, if you look at our situation, you could have sat back and said, we'll wait for COVID to finish, but it would have never resulted then in potentially improving education and making education so much more accessible. And I think that's what chartered accountants need to do. We typically look at risk a lot of our lives, so after my studies, it's a 7-year qualification. By the time you qualify as a CA, typically when you're at the end of that journey, you're sort of quite used to looking at risk and being quite risk averse. And I think that CAs maybe need to take a step back and look at what opportunities are out there that they can take their CA to and start creating companies, because we've got one of the worst unemployment rates in South Africa currently. And it's up to CASAs, once they qualify, to start looking at all the different ideas out there, the problems that they can start putting solutions to. Because ultimately, that is what's going to create jobs. That's what's going to drive employment. That's what's going to drive our GDP forward. And with the CASA qualification, you don't just sit back now and let the world come to you and think you've done all this hard work, you've studied. I've always said it's sort of the first brick in your house. It's really up to you now. You're in this fortunate position. What are you going to go and do with it?
Thank you for listening to the Young Difference Makers podcast. You can listen to other podcasts in this series, and you can head over to our website to find out more. We're at charteredaccountantsworldwide.com. We're also on Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you choose to listen to your podcasts. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe. It will really help us get the word out there. Talk to you again soon, and thanks for listening.